Where AI and an AI coach can also play, where is that they can see your context. They can see what's going on for you. A human coach can't sit with you at work and see what's
Mm-hmm.
going.
Welcome to the Talking AI podcast, where we talk AI with both experts in the field and early adopters. I'm your host, Matt Page, and we're here to demystify AI for you so you can get some value from it. Let's talk some AI. What if the power of AI could fundamentally change how we grow, learn, and work, not by replacing human connection, but by scaling it? And our guest today, Jamie Albers, co-founder of Mento, is reimagining the future of coaching and mentorship at the intersection of AI and human development. And Jamie and her team are tackling one of the big challenges out there in two-sided marketplace platforms and tools. It's that supply and demand mismatch. But instead of adding more human coaches, they're looking into the possibility of using AI to scale the supply side. But welcome to the show, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
All right, well, let's talk some AI. But first off, let's just set some context for the audience. Give us a quick overview of what is Mento. I kind of gave a little bit of a brief there,
Yeah.
but what's Mento? What's the problem you're solving? How did Mento come to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So Mento is a coaching and mentorship platform. The problem that we're solving is that we feel that in today's world, learning at work is broken. You will be shocked to know that companies spend $400 billion annually on learning and development at work. And yet almost every manager feels like they don't have enough support. All their every IC feels like they have probably virtually no support at work. And besides probably their manager and some peers. And that is not because companies don't mean well. They do. Every company knows that it's their responsibility to improve the performance of their employees, and that is often through investing in them. But there just aren't that many good solutions out there. The best solution out there is one-on-one coaching because it's personalized and in context. But even then, it's not as good as it needs to be because you might not actually be getting coached by someone that knows what you do or understands what success looks like in your organization or has led product somewhere. And so that is where we've started, which is all of our coaches at Mento are operators, meaning that they've had and have careers leading and working at some of the world's best companies. And we take a blended approach. So this is very unique to Mento is that we believe in the power of coaching and mentorship. Coaching helps you think and mentorship helps you do. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have is that people might be telling you, hey, you need to do this or hey, you need to do that. But how do you actually get there? And that's where support from people that have been there and done that or be a sounding board and help you figure out is really where our magic is.
Yeah, you're bringing back like some bad memories of having to take like the force training back in my,
Yeah.
corporate days of being in
Yeah.
large corporations. And,
Yeah.
the worst part about it is when you have this horrible training that the, individual contributor, the team members are not getting value from. It's sucking their time and you're spending a bunch of money on it. So yeah, that's an
Yeah. For
interesting
real. And even
approach.
if it's good training and you're like, wow,
Yeah.
that was great. I learned so much. Actually being able to go apply that because you're talking
Hmm.
about people are complex beings. Communication is challenging. Workplaces are challenging. It's not as simple as let me apply this formula to a conversation with someone. Like that's not that effective. And not the thing learning is this thing that's way over here on your left. And the actual practice and application is way over here on the right. And they very rarely intersect. And so that is the thing that we were constantly bringing together, both with our live coaching and now our AI powered coaching product as well, which is bringing it to people in the flow of work based on their context.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think like I was saying in the intro, these two-sided type of platforms and solutions are very difficult to get off the ground. Like I always remember the example with Uber when they were starting in a new
Yeah.
city, they would just have drivers just drive around randomly. So there would be supply in case somebody needed a ride, even though the demand wasn't there
Yeah.
yet. You had to kind of like
Yeah.
force one side of it. But, I love the model you're talking about with these coaches that are actual operators. But the constraint there obviously is there's just fewer of them relative to the people that could use their expertise. And I guess that's where this idea of okay, well, how do you leverage AI in the solution to supplement these coaches becomes
Yeah.
part of like how you're thinking about it. But I'm curious, like was this part of the original strategy? Has this manifested as of late as, AI just kind of blew up and all these capabilities came to be? How has that
Mhm.
evolved your strategy and kind of where do you see this going? Because right now you're kind of in this beta mode, testing this out within the platform.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. So when we started Mento, and this goes back to one of your original questions is why Mento and
Mhm.
why did we start this business? When we started Mento about 4 years ago now, it was from our own experiences. My co-founder and I, he had amazing mentors, and I
Mhm.
was very jealous of that. And I had actually had the privilege of getting access to a coach who was very much in the Mento model. She helped me think about my future and my career development while also helping me get better in the moment. And because she had actually done that before, and I was like, this is so incredible. I'd
Mhm.
recommended it all my friends. My friends were like, in what world do you think we can expense coaching? This was before the better ups and all these coaching platforms really came to be. But
Mhm.
even then, coaching platforms today, if it scales really well, which I don't think any of them do, because humans are
Mhm.
expensive, no matter the quality at the end of the
Yeah.
day, human time, people are expensive. They don't scale in the same way. And so it's not possible for every person in an organization to get the support they need to be successful. However, what we've been doing over the past few years is and the reason why we started Mento is to democratize access to
Mhm.
advice, guidance, and support at work. Coaching and mentorship is the delivery or is sort of the mechanism of it, but we feel that it's in the best interest of people and in the best interest of companies if you give people the support that they need to be successful, right? And at the end of the day, most companies, there's not enough resources. Like companies just there weren't great tools that aren't really
Mhm.
expensive. So that's where we started with Mento. We knew that at the top of the market, starting at the top of the market, which was with one-on-one coaching, was going to be the place to start. If we can learn how we do this with people and we can
Yeah.
encode that knowledge from a community of coaches who have the world's most valued expertise in their fields. And then we can code that knowledge and build on top of our own proprietary mentorship and coaching frameworks, there would be a technology solution that allowed us to scale it. And so obviously AI. And one of the things that I learned I was at a alphabet incubator called Jigsaw. And when I was
Mhm.
there, we were working on an API that detected hate and harassment online. So we were
Mhm.
already operating in the AI and ML space. It was so expensive. This was not technology
Yeah.
that would scale. You need humans to label every single piece of data. So when we started Mento, I knew that wasn't going to be the place that we could start. Like the technology just simply wasn't there unless you were unless you had a huge knowledge base already. You had a huge
Yeah.
corpus of training data. You could train that data. So, and then you would pay for it. And obviously, a lot of this technology, people are going to solve these problems. It was pretty obvious. Obviously, I did not predict the advent of OpenAI. However, it did feel that it wasn't going to cost millions of dollars for a company to be able to train a model. Like that just doesn't work. So, we started with humans. We knew we would need the data. We knew that we needed to prove a different model. We did not believe in the traditional models that were out there in terms of pure play coaching or pure play mentorship. So we set out to invent a new one that would actually drive performance at work. And now we're bringing that to people at scale through our AI product.
Yeah, and for like listeners here, what Jamie was just talking about is a really interesting kind of strategic approach because a lot of folks right now, I think, are like, okay, AI is the thing. Let's just go straight into AI. Let's build the AI
Yeah.
thing. Let's sell the AI thing. But I love how you've kind of taken the approach of, okay, let's figure this out with humans. And that gives us context for how to build a compelling AI solution. It's the same idea of if I'm like chatting with ChatGPT, I got to give it context so I can get a good output. And I think a lot of folks are skipping that step right now, just in this AI hype craze.
Yeah.
So, really interesting approach there. I think the democratizing effect too is you talked about that for coaching. I think AI today, that's kind of what's happened with these models being proliferated and open to all. They're just becoming cheaper and better. It feels like every other day,
Oh,
something's going on there.
100%. And just to that point, I think the thing that we felt we solved with human coaches, we're not trying to
Mm-hmm.
solve with an AI-based coach, which is with
Mm-hmm.
humans that understand your context. As you well know, the context problem has not been solved
Yeah.
with AI yet. Yes, you have to give OpenAI a ton of context, but being able to, and especially when you think about work, which needs to understand so many layers of context to be able to help you. Your
Yeah.
organization, your manager, your web of relationships, your conversations, and those are changing all the time, day by day, minute by minute in many cases. And being able to understand that context and then being able to actually then give that to everyone when they need it. Obviously, with OpenAI and a lot of these other tools still, they're relatively primitive in being able to understand some of that information. And so that's really where we're focused in the same way that our coaches are. Because our coaches understand your context because they've been there before, they can help guide you. And that's the same principle that we're bringing to our AI product as well.
Yeah, and you hit on an interesting point. And this is another, I think, interesting thing to think of when you're building out a product is in this context, AI is complementary to the solution. It's not
Very,
necessarily
very
replacing the human coach because you would use them in different ways. And that's where I
exactly.
think it gets really interesting. If I'm talking with some operator that works at Netflix or whatever
Yeah.
through the platform, their
Yeah.
time is very limited. I'm gonna like talk about the most strategic important things, but maybe I'm like, I was doing this right before the session. I'm facilitating a
Yeah.
session around offer development. Like that'd be a great thing to ask a coach about, but you may not want
Yeah.
to use your time there. So there,
Yeah.
becomes a valuable thing. You could use the AI coach for a
Yeah.
different use case.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I love that you brought up how it can expand where a coach can be
Mm.
because even with Mento and most other coaching experiences, it's every other week. That's twice a month.
Hmm.
Like we have a lot going on
Yeah.
in our lives and a lot going on in work, which is changing every single day. And another thing that's so interesting is that where AI and an AI coach can also play, where is that they can see your context. They can see what's going on for you. A human coach can't sit with you at work and see what's
Hmm.
going. So in some ways, it can be there with you. You're playing basketball and it's like helping you call the shots. While you're playing, that's very helpful. And then you can also watch game tape afterward. These things just haven't been possible before. And this is where AI is very exciting. Theoretically, yes, you could record something, but I would love to think that we'd all record videos of ourselves all day and then just watch that and give ourselves feedback. That would not be as much fun and that would certainly be very time consuming. So these are much more approachable ways for people to get the support, feedback, advice, guidance that they need. And I think this will completely change how we work. You won't need as much reactive tools in the workplace. Like performance
Hmm.
management, completely reactive and like pretty much broken system from almost every company. It doesn't mean they don't play an important role, but I think that the role that it plays is because that's the only good way that we have right now is to think about people's performance is like after the fact and usually 3 to 6 months after, which is pretty wild if you think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And you've forgotten everything by that point too. And so I'm thinking through the solution. I'd be curious how you're thinking about it and how you're thinking it's going to evolve. Cause obviously there's like the idea of, okay, I am a human, I am a
There you
coach,
go.
and I'm going to have this AI version of myself, kind of like a digital twin that, you know, thinks the way I do, has the history and experience that I do, and a mentee can talk to that specific coach. Is that the idea to where, and then like I'm getting into business model, I think this would be super interesting. How does it work then? Is it like almost like you're licensing yourself out as this AI thing? Or do you see a future where you're actually creating these AI coaches from scratch to where they aren't necessarily ever a human, but they are very tailored to specific use cases? Like, how are you thinking about it? Is it one or the other, both, or something completely different?
Yeah, I love that. So, and such a good question because there's a lot of different ways where you could take this.
Yeah.
So, what we have now and what we've built is and building as it's ever evolving is kind of what we loosely think of as a Mento expertise engine. This includes we basically invented a methodology around coaching and mentorship. We have different
Mhm.
coaching frameworks. These are the same ones that we use to teach our coaches. So we are teaching our AI coach something similar. We have collective expertise of all of our coaches. We have tons of different data that we've been able to collect and aggregate in terms of how we drive performance, biggest areas of feedback, different frameworks for supporting people. Then we have organization level data. So it's customized at an
Hmm.
organization level. And then it's also customized at an individual level. So we think
Hmm.
about this is sort of the Mento expertise layer. And then on top of that, we have basically built like a context, a multi-layer content infrastructure to actually help pull that right piece of context, make it useful and relevant to you at the right moment with a relevant and specific UI to
Hmm.
so that you can actually deliver real-time coaching and mentorship for you. So think about it more like that than, hey, I'm a person. Like we don't actually think, at least today, we don't personally believe that AI is actually very good or LLMs are actually very good at emulating people. They are really good at encoding expertise and helping you find that information. And what we're doing is building a multi-layer system to actually enable to apply that to you at the right moment based on your specific context. And so pulling from all of that. So that's how we think about it. And at the top of that, from user experience, we've developed a framework for creating thousands of custom GPTs that are specific to you. So it's going to be a very interesting way. So you could have multiple agents, coaches, if you will, below the surface operating, helping you in a variety of different moments, a communication moment, a performance management moment, a coaching moment, a learning moment. Think of all these different moments that we have throughout the day and delivering a very specific one to you based on what we know about you, what's going on for you, what your growth areas are.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, that's really cool. And you hit on something too. Like you no longer are kind of constricted to having one coach. You can have multiple coaches once you have AI. So back to the two-sided marketplace, you kind of have, in
yeah.
essence, infinite supply, which is really cool. I think another thing I was just playing with the other day, I don't know if y'all have tested it out yet. And a few of these models are using this, but like the ChatGPT, the app, it now has vision in essence to where you can do a couple things. You can basically turn on the camera and it can see what you see, which is kind of an interesting
Mhm.
thing if like you're in the
Yeah.
flow of the moment, or you can share
Yeah.
your screen as well
Yeah.
and it then has
Yeah.
context for, I'm looking at this email, I'm working on this workflow or
Sure.
anything. So I wonder, how do y'all think of the multimodality in the future? Because right now, I'm assuming it's kind of just chat based. It's kind of where a lot of things start. It's just
Yeah.
chat
Yeah.
based, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
but you could go a lot deeper in a lot of different ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I think one of the big problems that we feel as well is that LLMs are still not as accessible
Hmm.
as they could be. A lot of it does still depend on your prompting ability, the
Yeah.
context that you give it, how you engage with it. And so building at the application layer, a few things that we think are really important in order to make this technology, and we think of LLMs as technology, not magical solutions that will solve all our problems. So maybe one day.
Hmm.
And so it's things like,
One day, yeah.
yeah, like we can help do a lot of the prompting for you. We are doing that based on our interaction model. So you get from
Yeah.
context. We have a ton of context already. So we're actually
Yeah.
able to do a lot of prompting behind the scenes for you. So the ability to get great advice, coaching, mentorship, support at work does not depend how good you are at prompting. And then also another layer that is generative UIs. So can we pick the right framework for you? Is it chat? Is it voice? Is it then? Is it, how are we interacting with you? And I think also we're going to have a lot of other new modes of interaction that are invented or created out of this technology. Maybe it's a team-based interaction.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways to think about modalities, which is where it also gets really exciting. Maybe it's an extension of yourself as, your coach can be, your knowledge will be encoded in that. Maybe you send that person, you send your coach over, your AI coach over
Yeah.
20 team members to go kind of get some feedback from you, right? So there's so many different ways that we can interact collectively and individually with the technology that I think is going to be very exciting. And this is, one of the many reasons why we feel like this has the power to just be truly transformative for how we work, because it's going to invent entirely new ways for us to work and collaborate together that I think will end up solving some of the hardest parts of work, which is communication, collaboration, managing yourself, working through difficult problems, loneliness, stress. I mean, all of the things that we don't have a lot of support around, but are the problems. Like I fully believe that most people like have great ways of upskilling themselves, learning about a topic, but very few ways to get sort of this workplace level support. So yeah, I love that you brought that up. I think it's a very exciting future that we will all live in.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point too. I hadn't really thought about it, but
Yeah.
in essence, the AI coach you're working with could technically be working with somebody else and have the context of what it's talked with you on. And then, which is super powerful because then it
True.
has
True.
context of the organization. But I'm sure that also opens up interesting complexities too, because, they may know some,
Yeah.
nuanced kind of personal confidential thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
which creates this whole new layer of, yeah, and, where do you draw the line? And then does
Yeah.
the AI hallucinate and all that kind of fun stuff?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's why you have to be careful. It's like we're not starting with that because LLMs aren't yet intelligent. So you have to be
Hmm.
careful. Of course, number one for us is privacy and security. We
Yeah.
definitely fall much more further along the cloud route because we are dealing in personal and potentially delicate human problem. Everything would be opt-in, right? And probably some level of
Hmm.
customization. Like, hey, I can tell this is what I want my AI code to know. But yeah, you do have to be careful. And I think actually it does remind me of sort of the human coaching problem is sometimes people ask us like, I don't want to work with a coach that also like works with someone else on my team.
Mm, yeah.
And
Or a competitor or something,
yeah, or a competitor, something like that. And
Yeah.
then it's one of those things where you're like, coaches can hold two things
Yeah.
at once and it actually not be a problem. So we're kind of like, okay, if it ever becomes a problem, let us know. You can always switch coaches. And most people end up being like, okay, like it's fine, right? Because a coach can hold two things and has the sophistication to not bias
Yeah.
them and, or not totally bias them, right? They can have a very private conversation. But that's the level that you would need to go to, I think, to be
Yeah.
able to probably do it right. Or some variation of that where you could truly box off the information and the information that it has so that you don't accidentally, share information. But I think all of that will
Yeah.
be figured in due time.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious, as you're looking at integrating AI into the solution, into the platform, like what's one of the biggest hurdles you face that, listeners that may be looking at building their own thing or integrating it into their product or business, what's like a hurdle that you all have faced, or
Yeah.
something that maybe was easier than you'd expected?
Oh, I like that. So I think there's two things. One, I think this is specific to us, so you can tell me if this is not relevant, but
Mhm.
when you are deeply integrating into a company, like we are with our AI product, sitting in someone's Slack, for example, we kind of thought, oh, hey, we're early. Like we have even partnerships in play with companies already through our led coaching experience. So we have our MSA terms and things like that.
Mhm.
And so we were like, oh, it's an early beta design partnerships. Like we'll be able to kind of bypass security concerns as long as we're not like
Yeah.
training on data and things like that and like taking a very much privacy and security mindset. And that was not the case. Security
Mhm.
teams were like, absolutely not. So we had to move more quickly on that. So I think if you're building and you do want to be more integrated into companies, definitely make sure that you're tackling that sooner rather than later. So that's one. And two, so that's one thing. And then honestly though, so for us, we entered in the SOC 2 type 2 observation window. But then once you have that, it's like pretty smooth sailing because we're not taking people's data and things like that. So, and I think also this idea that you need to collect a lot of data, especially at the outset of building, is not true. Just in terms of we're not going to be living in probably a world where you need like millions of different data sets in order to be able to provide value. Some of that can come later. It's going to provide your ability to build and test with people, which is going to be the most important thing at the beginning. A lot of people will be like, oh, what's your unique training data, this, that, and the other thing. Or, why aren't you collecting data when you're piloting with partners? And you're just like, that's just not really what's important right now. So I
Yeah.
think that was something that a lot of the engineers on our team felt really strongly about. And that's really proven to be true because it's enabled us to build along wonderful partners. And at the end of the day, LLM is just a technology, and if it doesn't actually provide value for people or solve their problems, nothing really else matters. So figure that out first, and then you can worry about some of the other stuff later.
Yeah, the first pain point reminds me just talking to some of our own
Yeah.
clients. Like you may
Yeah.
have an existing MSA, but or whatever it may be, but their level of it comes back to their risk tolerance and whatnot. But once you go into the AI route, which is something unknown, it does raise a level of questions and whatnot. But then you have the flip side where every company right now, I feel like, is being pressured to use AI in some
Yes.
compelling way, whether it's the
Yes.
board or the executive team or whoever.
Now,
So it's okay, well, how do I do it in a meaningful way as well? And then the other point you mentioned,
the
just
Brent's phone.
it's smart though. Like and I think this is something too, like LLMs, they are extremely capable just out of the box. And I've gone back and forth on where you've heard of
Yes.
like the AI wrappers and, they're not differentiated. They don't have a moat and they'll just be killed by the next chat GPT feature that gets launched. But, if you can go back in time and there's so many SaaS products out there that are basically just a wrapper around Excel or some workflow or function, they gain
Yes.
a lot of traction. So I think that's where I've come
Yeah.
around in that belief where if you can target a very specific use case, industry, domain,
Yeah.
workflow, and do it in a compelling, user-centric way, there is value in it. And, you don't have to go spend millions and billions to build a model. Just
Right.
use what's
Right.
off the shelf, and then you can supplement
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah. Are you seeing attitudes for your clients about that? How do people feel about using off the shelf technology?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the models themselves, very open to using those directly off the shelf. So a couple of things. It's an interesting question.
Mhm.
There's obviously like the OpenAI and ChatGPT's Llama has gotten a lot of traction just because it's open source. The Meta's created, and then
Yeah.
RAG has been a really big thing for us, retrieval augmented generation, where you're kind of
Yeah.
just giving AI
Huge.
context to your proprietary data. And like
Yeah.
the LLM is capable in and of itself. It's just missing the context. Once it has the context of your business and your data, then it can just leverage that like it would leverage anything else. So that's been a very kind of powerful thing that we've dug into for different solutions.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. And I think one of the philosophies that we have is that, hey, these foundational models are cutting edge,
Hmm.
and but it's also how you use them.
Yeah.
And this is where really incredible, so grateful to work alongside such phenomenal AI engineers, because they're really able, it's not just about having the technology, it's always about how you apply it and how you make that accessible to people. And there is so much
Hmm.
room between an off the shelf, you know, just an open AI model, and the layering that you can put on top of that to actually make that information useful to people. There's so much to be done there.
Yeah.
There's a ton of fine tuning, RAG, compounding systems that you can build. And then
Hmm.
eventually over time, just because you start there doesn't mean you end there. Over time, you transition and you fine tune them and RAG and train them on your own data and incorporate them as you learn and figure out what the value is. But I think that it's one of those things that's like very buzzy. And I feel like people feel like they have to ask that question in
Yeah.
terms of, is this just off the shelf? What is, that, et cetera. I'm sure you all get at that question all the time when you're in client meetings, but there's so much value to be derived at the end user point. And I know I kind of laugh sometimes because, there's 50 great CRMs that are all huge businesses, for
Hmm.
example. No one's, and yes, they're all a little bit different here, there, and the other thing, and they all will differentiate. And, they've all found their paths or different markets. And the same thing will happen with so many of these different applications that are being built. And that's great. And that's okay. There's
Yeah.
so much innovation to be had.
Yeah, that's a great stopping point. Nice little compliment for the engineers there. And I think too, the other interesting thing I've kind of gotten into is like you in the past you had to have a path to scale some large thing because it was very expensive to build a product. Now it's not. So you can build
Yeah.
for a much smaller audience, so much easier to get started, even if it's like a simple use case you're solving for yourself. So I guess for the audience, go build
Yes.
something. There's so many tools out there.
Yeah.
There's Cursor, Replets, Lovable, if you're into the building thing, or even just start using ChatGPT more, custom GPTs. There's all kinds of fun stuff that
Yeah,
everybody
exactly.
should be using this daily. But
100.
Jamie, where can people find you? Where can they find Mento, learn more about Mento?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, Matt. Really appreciate your
Yeah.
time. They can learn about Mento at mento.co. And my only social media is on LinkedIn, which says a lot about me. I'm just Jamie Albers on LinkedIn.
Nice. Great. Thanks for talking some AI, Jamie.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Talking AI podcast. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to leave us a review. We love those. For more info on Talking AI, visit talkingaipodcast.com.